Hi everybody, it's Brian here. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. So today I have a real special episode geared up for you. Recently I had the opportunity of making contact with a gentleman by the name of Chris Hughes, who is an administrator in one of the Facebook pages that I contribute to. We've basically been in communication with each other for the past few weeks, and in discussing and getting to know a little bit about each other's strengths and weaknesses pertaining to print on demand, I came to understand that he has a wealth of information with respect to the print on demand industry, search engine optimization, and we got talking about the whole concept pertaining to tag spamming, which, as many of you who have been selling on print on demand platforms like Redbubble know, it's something that we have to contend with, and it's rather quite frustrating to have to deal with it, and in fact to even see it existing on these platforms, which do take away the possibility of making sales on account that all of these designs are taking up valuable space in the marketplace against our designs. So I asked him if he'd be interested in sitting down for an interview with me, and the topic of today's video is in fact tag spamming. And I think there are a lot of insightful bits of information that you're going to find really, really helpful, really, really useful. And in fact, there were actually aspects of tag spamming that I myself was not even aware of. So I want you to grab a favorite beverage of yours, sit back, relax, watch the episode, and enjoy this interview with Chris Hughes. So, hi Chris, welcome to the channel. It's good to have you here today on this particular episode.
It's great to meet with you finally, Brian. I've been a great admirer of your videos. I think you have one of the best YouTube channels when it comes to the print-on-demand arena. It's a privilege for me.
Thank you very much, Chris. Very nice of you to say that. So basically, for those who are watching, Chris and I have been communicating in the background these past, 2 or 3 weeks, I think it was, Chris, something along the lines of that. And well, Chris obviously runs a particular Facebook page group, which we'll be talking about later in this show, but we've been really discussing the whole notion about, this whole idea about tag spamming or whatnot. In today's topic, we're going to be actually looking into that. But Chris, I thought maybe it would be a great idea to maybe let the viewers know a little bit about yourself, how you got into the print-on-demand industry, and just a little bit about you as Chris Hughes from a personal and professional point of view.
Yeah, well, my background is as an IT consultant. I've spent many, many years working with things like search engines and search engine optimization. I've even been lucky enough to actually implement some search engines for some of my clients over the years. I've also written vast quantities of unreadable, boring IT text for different industries, which I try to block that from my mind now. A couple of years ago, I retired, and I wanted to keep my mind sharp. And I've also been interested in graphic design. So I decided I wanted to teach myself the basic principles of graphic design. I downloaded GIMP, which is the free sort of Photoshop clone.
Yeah.
And in trying to teach myself how to do graphic design, of course, I stumbled across sites like Redbubble and TeePublic, where you could create a design and then upload it and then attempt to sell it. I must admit, my early attempts in the first few months were pretty dire. But as time has gone on, I've been on now a couple of years. I started to make a few sales here and there, and I started to understand better how these sites worked. And I think I've got a pretty good handle now. I think that if I sort of force myself to sit down and do a graphic design, I can tag it well, I can describe it well, and I can put it up. And pretty much I will guarantee over the course of several months or maybe a year, I will get a few sales, So I'm happy with that. I think that's great.
Yeah,
that's sort of my background.
Okay, excellent, cool. Well, it's a nice way of creating a little bit of an extra side hustle, something to keep one's time occupied, particularly over the dire couple of years that we've had globally with this pandemic or whatnot. I think it provided a lot of people with some much needed distraction, and at the same time to sort of gain a little bit of extra income, perhaps maybe for those people who lost their jobs due to the pandemic or whatnot. So I think it's a wonderful industry to be in. There's a low barrier of entry to it, and there's a lot of low-hanging fruit with respect to print-on-demand sites like Redbubble too as well. But there's also a sort of dark end to the print-on-demand industry, which I think we've been talking about this too as well with respect to tag spammers. You know, you've got a lot of people who are on these websites for very valid and genuine reasons, trying to come up and share the work that they've created, their artwork, their photography, their graphic design, in the hopes of, you know, trying to get out there in front of the eyes of potential customers. But then they also have to contend with these, you know, low lifes, sorry, that's what I have to call them, you know, who come up and tag spam and basically start ranking high in the marketplace at the expense of these really honest people who are trying to make, you know, some kind of side living or hustle out of it. I don't know, maybe you'd like to share your thoughts about that too as well.
Yeah, I find the tag spammers quite interesting. I like I said, I sort of wanted to work with things like Redbubble to keep my mind sharp. So I've always been curious about how things work. And when I saw that there were people with this tag spamming, I really wanted to know, what were they doing? I mean, they were obviously trying to get a leg up on the rest of us, but what actually was their strategy? And I came to realize that it's not one kind of tag spammer. There's quite a few different strategies going on out there. And each one of them is actually trying to defeat the search engine. Or they're trying to get, you know, by doing something a bit odd that the search engine can't quite cope with. They are, trying to get ahead. And I just would like to say something about the Redbubble search engine and about Google. You know, Google is a very clever search engine. It has some wonderful kind of technology behind it. But the Redbubble, I want to talk specifically about Redbubble because that's what I know quite well. The Redbubble search engine isn't that kind of beast. The Redbubble search engine, I believe, and I could be corrected here, but I don't think that Redbubble even have it. It's not theirs. I suspect they buy a service from another company.
Okay.
And that's a sort of configured service. So the company will say to them, well, how do you want the search engine to work? And then Redbubble says, well, we want it to do this. And then Redbubble, in my belief, actually pays some kind of monthly fee for that service. And that is why I think quite often you see some odd things going on. That there isn't a technician or a group of technicians at Redbubble who are configuring the search engine. It's more that somebody at Redbubble has to tell somebody else in probably another country, you know, we need the search engine to do this. And then someone will say, well, can you specify, you know, in writing how that's to work? And it becomes a transaction and then there's a cost. And so I think this is why the Redbubble search engine is quite clunky. It doesn't, for example, have what I would call a crawler or a spider. So usually a search engine will go out and crawl the web, look at web pages, and it follows links and it finds new information, and then it gathers that information, puts it in its database. But the Redbubble search engine doesn't really work that way. Basically, when you upload a design, there's a little a message put into a queue, and that queue is about 10 or 15 minutes long or so. And when Redbubble, the search engine, sort of gets to that message in the queue, when it's its turn, it goes and it indexes the title, it indexes the tags. That means it takes them and puts them in its database. It ignores the description for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. And it takes some other information, like, for example, the date that the design was uploaded. And those things, that's the information that Redbubble uses whenever you make a search. Okay. And that's a very specific thing. That's not a Google type thing. It's not an intelligent matching kind of thing. It's something quite mechanical. And that's why the tag spammers actually succeed, because that is much easier to hack than say. You'll notice, for example, in repetition in Google, if you start repeating the same phrase over and over again, after a while, Google goes, nope. And
exactly. And you go straight down to the bottom of the ranking. They don't even remove you straight out.
Exactly.
Indeed. Exactly. Well, we have a couple of screenshots that we can share with the viewers, and we'll put up the first one here, and we can sort of like maybe discuss the various types of tag spamming that's out there, and effectively what we can learn from it, so that either A, clearly we don't repeat it ourselves as sellers, and maybe share some other insights too as well that you'd like to share. Sound good to you?
Yeah, sure.
Fantastic.
Can you show them on screen for us?
Yep. Just give me a second. I'll just bring it up here. Okay. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so here we got the first one here, and this one pertains to keyword repetition. Maybe you'd like to discuss this a little bit for our viewers?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is that, you know, on Redbubble, a lot of people think, oh, I must only use 15 tags and I must use only single word tags, and, you know, that's how I'm going to do my searching. But here you see something which is in basic contrast to this. And I think we've all seen this. I think we've all, you know, scrolled down through a design and looked at a tags. If you're a designer who's been on Redbubble for some time, you've seen this pattern before. And it's like, what is going on here? Indeed. Has the search engine blown up, or has Redbubble? But it's not. It's nothing of the kind. Basically, the designer who has put up this design, and you know what the design is. It's a design that says "busy doing nothing." And I think we can guess that straight away. It's probably a text-based T-shirt that just says the three words "busy doing nothing." A very sort of simple design. I think there's a sloth on this one, but let's not go into that.
Yeah.
But you can see here what they've done. They've started by busy doing nothing, then they've doubled it, busy doing nothing, busy doing nothing, busy doing nothing, busy doing. I mean, they just keep repeating the same phrase. So what the hell is this? Why does this work? Or does it work even? And the answer is yes, it does work. If you go to do the search on Redbubble for busy doing nothing, you'll find that this design is quite high up. I think it's ranked about 6th or 7th on the page. And it's beating a lot of designs for busy doing nothing, which have already sold. So Redbubble's ranking is quite interesting. First of all, it gives tremendous power to designs that have already sold. Yeah. And generally, you will find those at the top of your search results. If you look, if you type doing nothing, and you look and you sort by most relevant, you will see that at the top of the list is usually the best sellers. Yeah. And then after the best sellers become those designs which have used the tags in a sort of economical way. So. But in this case, this busy doing nothing starts to outrank. It's so powerful. It starts to outrank the selling designs. And that's why this spammer is doing it this way, busy doing nothing, because they're pushing themselves way up to the top of their search results. But this is what you would call a short tail search. I mean, if you look here, there's nothing but busy doing nothing. Yeah, there's no variation at all. Not at all. Okay, I mean, you can very easily defeat this kind of spamming by just adding I'm busy doing nothing, and make that your design. I'm busy doing nothing. You won't beat the busy doing nothing guy, but a lot of people type in I'm busy doing nothing, or they type in I'm busy doing apostrophe nothing, or they type in, you know, busy doing nothing kind of thing, like different variations. Yeah, exactly. And that's interesting, I think, because I mean that's one thing. Not only can we defeat these guys quite easily, they can also give us a sort of a signpost as to what's quite a good phrase to focus on. Do you see what I mean? Indeed. Because obviously, if you're seeing something like this, well, great. You can say, as you said, he's ranking quite high. Let me try and come up with another variation of it so that obviously I can sort of sidestep him, rank myself high for that particular design. There's some similarities, but obviously not have to contend with somebody like this who's obviously tag spamming and trying to knock out my design, which obviously I put in a lot of hard work in, gave a lot of thought to the keyword tags that I'm going to put in, and, you know, just push this guy aside. Unfortunately, yeah, it is a reality that we see many of these particular tag spammers up putting this keyword repetition type of tagging, which is quite frustrating. But yeah, you know, the angle that you are taking from with respect to your explanation that, you know, there is actually something that can be learned from it is quite interesting. And I have a feeling, myself included, it's not something that was
readily at the forefront of my mindset when I was thinking, okay, what can we learn from tag spammers? In fact, I would actually think, what can I do to get rid of tag spamming? So you are really producing, a really interesting angle on that, which has shed a new and opened a new light and opened a new door in respect to this. Definitely, we don't want to, promote this kind of behavior, because obviously, as you stated earlier on, this is definitely a recipe for disaster if Redbubble ever gets their act straight and decide, hey, we're not going to allow for this to happen, and they go and and they start blanket closing shops that do this. We definitely don't want to be in that particular position. But in the interim, in the short term, learning from these particular people in terms of what not to do and how to circumvent what it is they're doing could actually be a really important tool in our toolbox to try and get our designs ranking higher and hopefully making more sales. Excellent. You go ahead.
Yeah, I have a couple of other things to add here. I mean, one of the interesting things here is that how many words, keywords, like individual words they have in this tag field. I mean, we're talking hundreds of words here. There's only 3 words, busy, doing, and nothing, but there's hundreds of words. And that's quite interesting because in Redbubble, the more individual words, keywords you add in your tags field, the more you dilute the power of your words. So if you have 10 words in your tags field, I always think of them as like a sort of a score out of 100. So if I have 10 tags, each word has a value of like 10, right? If I have 50 tags, each tag only has a value of 2. And if I had 100, they only have a value of 1. So the more words you add, the weaker each of your tags, your keywords becomes. But what's happening here with the repetition is that the repetition of a word sort of beats that dilution effect. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So although that's like an interesting thing. Okay, so I think to myself, well, so suppose I want to emphasize some aspect of my design. I could look upon the keyword structure as a kind of tree where I have the root, the trunk, and maybe my trunk is something like school, all right? And then I could repeat the word school several times because that's the trunk. And then I would have branches, and I might have something like school life, school lover, school student, school whatever. So I repeat school, but I keep the extra words as a sort of the branches. And then on the end of that, I have the leaves, and the leaves might be something like super school student. So I'm repeating school in the trunk. Maybe I repeat student in the branches, and super is like the leaf, as it were. So what I'm doing is I'm subtly shifting the emphasis in my tags by using a small amount of repetition. Have you got me?
Yep, I do.
And
exactly.
That is basically focusing the searches more in a more specific kind of way.
So it's a really good tactic to actually consider too, as well, as because there will be understandably times when people will be looking at their computer screen after creating a design and figuring out, okay, what kind of tags am I going to actually utilize in order to get this design out in front of the eyes of potential customers? And then more often than not, as is the case, they get writer's block and can't figure out what it is they're going to do. And then just basically either A, don't even put relevant tags at all, try to search on the internet for keywords, which unfortunately don't do any justice to their design. And I think this example that you've given with the tree and the branches and the leaves coming out, you've got your different steps with respect to the generation of keyword tags, which can be even more effective in terms of getting your designs out in front of people. So that's a real good takeaway to take from this whole aspect of what we're seeing here on the screen. So well done for that. Excellent.
Exactly,
okay, let's move on to the next one.
Thing to say, when you see this, guys, if you're a designer and you see this strategy, report them. Go to the product page, scroll down to the bottom, select inappropriate tagging, and then really go to hell, because these people are destroying Redbubble, really. Their designs are usually rubbish, and that means that basically rubbish is rising up the search results, and it's destroying Redbubble for all of us.
Indeed. And worse yet, you'll actually find those who actually blanket copy other people's designs, add it onto this tag spamming, and on the hopes of trying to make the quick sale, And in turn, it's not only frustrating those who are actually working hard and creating designs. Now they also have to contend with the fact that, you know, we've got tag spammers, we've got people who are stealing our designs and whatnot. So that's a real good point to make. Okay, so let's see if we can get to the next example here. Okay, so Chris, so the next one that we've got to show the viewers here pertains to keyword clouds. Maybe you'd like to discuss this a little bit for them?
Yeah, I mean, at first glance, this looks like the same as the last example, doesn't it? I mean, it's just like a huge number of words, but something a bit more subtle is going on here. This is actually from one of Redbubble's more successful designers. I'm not quite sure successful is the word, but somebody with many, many designs. And they seem to have adopted a different approach here. If you look here, the design was something to do with Beatrice Potter, Peter Mouse. You can see the first words, but as you look down, you see we sort of moving off in different things. They're like the third row: outdoor, country, countryside, visual, visualize, visualize, sense, senses, blue, brown, cream. I don't know what's going on here. Heaven, heavens, heavenly paradise. Or what is going on?
Indeed.
And then I realized that there's no repetition here at all. This person is working not towards the short tail of a small, you know, one small popular phrase.
Right.
They've gone the other way. They're looking at the long tail searches.
Extreme long tail, yeah.
You can actually pick out all sorts of weird things here. For example, you could pick out baby football savant. I'm not sure anyone's ever going to search for baby football savant, but this design matches it. You could look out for something like powerful astrological girl. I mean, it matches here. But obviously, if you do that search and this design pops up, it's not going to be relevant to you. But I don't think the designer cares. What the designer is sort of trying to do is basically capture all those weird searches that don't really match anything else. They have used hundreds and hundreds of keywords here. And as I said before, when you have lots of keywords, that dilutes the impact of them. So what will happen is that their designs will appear basically right on the last page of the of the list, as it were, because it's sort of, it's diluted down to the bottom. But sometimes, you know, when the search is something like astronomer, worker, computer, or something weird, it doesn't matter, because there's only ever going to be one design that pops up, and it's going to be this one.
This one.
And maybe people will look at it and say, "Oh, I quite like Beatrix Potter." And this is sort of this is a weird thing. I call this synonym tagging. You know, you can see particularly astronomy, astronomer, astronomers, astrology, astrologist, astrological zodiac. They're not the same thing. But you can see where his
and then we're up over to shamans. I mean, what is that all about too as well? Indeed.
Yeah, well, I guess this sort of caters, once you leave the astronomers, this caters for people who believe in the spiritual and the supernatural and mind readings and things like that.
Quite a mouthful over here too as well. I mean, I have to admit, this is the first time that I'm actually seeing this particular style of tag spamming in terms of what you call the keyword cloud. And I can see what they're trying to do over here, but clearly it's definitely not on. I mean, again, it's really putting us as, you know, genuine designers up on that in a very bad, I mean, with a very bad taste in our mouth. Because when obviously I see something like this and I'm wondering, you know, you're really putting aside, and probably they don't care that they're doing, you're putting aside a lot of hard workers over there who are trying to get their designs to be seen by people, and yet we're coming up with something like this, and you got to wonder, what is Redbubble actually doing in order to try to curtail this and try to stop this? I mean, I think you probably will agree, we've actually, even on this Facebook group that you tend to run, we've had a number of people who've complained about the fact that, you know, Redbubble has closed down their shop and whatnot, and I'm like really on tetherhooks to answer back to them and say, well, were you tag spamming? Were you guilty of doing this as well? And then there have been occasions where, unfortunately, I would have spoken to some of them, and you can see the genuine what's the word I'm looking for? You can see that they're genuine behind their concern, because they would have been just, sellers like you or I, and perhaps maybe they got caught up in the large net that maybe Redbubble threw out in terms of closing shops. I mean, I've actually had a shop of mine which was closed down. It was relatively new. I was focusing on just coffee mugs with my own designs on it. And I think maybe after about 4 or 5 weeks, just out of the blue, it was closed down. I contacted Redbubble to find out why and got no answer. And I figured it was just more work than it was worth in order to try and get it reopened and whatnot. But what's frustrating, and I think there are a lot of people who are watching this video perhaps might be in the same boat, is that you'll get these genuine people who are trying to gain some degree of success on Redbubble, and for whatever reason, they just get banned or closed down, as particularly if they would have been genuine and really avoided tag spamming and maybe made one mistake and chung boom, all of a sudden their shop has been banned and closed down. And then you see something like what we're seeing on the screen over here, where there's a really blatant, in your face tag spamming kind of way. And you still see designs like this flourishing on the Redbubble platform. And this definitely, I don't know how you feel, Chris, about it, but it's very frustrating for me too, as well. When I see something like this.
Yeah, for me, this guy is not as bad as the first one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can look at this word cloud, as it were, and I can see Beatrix Potter, I can see British, I can see writer, I can see girl, I can see a lot of words which are quite relevant to probably the design that was up there.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see a lot of synonyms as well. And someone sort of deep down in the long tail of the searching, they're not really worrying me that much either. Because there's something, well, I will say here, I said this thing about dilution, that the more words you use, the more diluted you are in the search results and the further down you are. So this person is actually quite easy to beat.
Mm-hmm.
If your selection of words is much more relevant to your design, because I think that if a random Beatrix Potter design pops up in the middle of a football kind of, a football search,
mm-hmm.
the first thing you think is, what the hell is that? I'm looking for Arsenal, Chelsea, or
mm-hmm.
or whatever. So you could be much more specific, and then you will beat these guys. And I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure that this is tag spamming. This seems to me to be something. Could we call it over enthusiastic tagging, perhaps? I don't know.
I was going to suggest something like that too, as well.
So bad. I will say one thing about shop closure, and I don't think that tag spamming ever leads to shop closure. It probably loses to loss of design. Shop closure is almost always, in my experience and from talking to people, to do with trademark infringement.
Mm-hmm.
Trademark infringement seems to be the big no-no, because that's the one that Redbubble could be sued over very easily.
Yeah.
Copyright infringement is also a no-no,
mm-hmm.
but doesn't seem to be quite so bad in Redbubble's eyes. And then the next one is image rights violation.
Mm-hmm.
That is also, I mean, basically, they'll take your designs down. But the real bad one is trademark infringement. So that's why you should always check your trademarks before you put a design up.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, as you've probably seen on some of my episodes in the past too, I always tell people that, before you put something up, or even in terms of a keyword that you're going to use, just double check it to make sure. There's a lot of websites out there that will help you to give indication whether or not a word or a design has been trademarked. And if it is, just blatantly stay away from it. It's really not worth the hassle, Definitely not.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Excellent.
Okay.
Okay, so should we go to the next one?
Yeah, sure. Let's see what we got next.
Okay, so
this looks much better, doesn't it? This looks much better.
Yeah.
I mean, apart from the fact that we're using words like the Beatles, I think this looks much more to our eyes like a normal kind of tagging example. But I wanted to point out here is the first three words: revolver, album, logo, and Beatles, of course. I mean, obviously, from that, you're going to pretty quickly understand what the design is. It's the album logo from the Beatles' Revolver album.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, and but I want to sort of point out here is what I call sort of distant relatives going on. So obviously we have the names of the band, but we also have Abbey Road. That's a different album.
Mm-hmm.
We have Sergeant Pepper's. We have the White Album. You know, the Magical Mystery Jar. What's happening here is that the designer is using sort of a kind of close relative approach to the tagging.
Yeah.
It's not exactly what the design is, but it's words you might be interested in if you are a Beatles fan. You got me?
Yeah, I do.
I don't know. Is this valid?
I think what they're trying to do over here is that they're hoping that, well, if you are a Beatles fan and maybe if you weren't necessarily looking for the Revolver album, but you were maybe looking for Magical Mystery Tour, you might say, oh, actually, that's not bad. Let me take a look at it. So there is a certain justification for the tactic that they're doing, although I don't really like the fact that clearly this particular design, and we don't know, obviously we're not seeing it here on the screen, and nor am I interested in seeing it, but the fact that they've actually tagged into the topic about pertaining to the Beatles, which clearly is a trademarked word or phrase in itself. Yeah. So that in itself is definitely a huge, let's put it this way, red alert type of thing. I would definitely not tread into it in any sort of manner or way. But if we had to actually try to utilize this tactic in maybe sort of a generic non-trademark sort of way to maybe reach out and branch out to somebody who might be in close assimilation to what it is that we're doing, but maybe not spot on, they might actually say, okay, let me consider that. I hadn't thought about that. Let me see it. But clearly in this particular case, this is definitely not something that, you know, we would definitely recommend to do, particularly with respect to the Beatles.
No, I mean, obviously, the Beatles aspect is copyright, trademark, infringement, or that's a difficulty. But for me, I'm sort of wondering, you know, in our last example, we looked at synonyms, word clouds, where there were a lot of words that were very similar. But what we're doing here is something different. I mean, if I have, for example, a Paris design, a design for Paris, if I use the tag London, San Francisco, Sydney, am I tag spamming? I mean, there's nothing to do with my design. What am I capturing the eyes of people who like to travel, for example? I think this is one of the difficulties when it comes to this idea of, you know, keeping your tags relevant.
Yeah.
And what is tag spamming? Because I mean, I have to be honest that I do the same thing. I mean, I quite often go off and I think, okay, this is a design for people who like cute animals. You know, I write hedgehog, gerbil, and you know, I think we all do. And I think this is perhaps part of the problem of why Redbubble doesn't always sort of react to these things, because it's like, what is tag spamming? Yeah. I don't know.
There's a gray area with respect to this one, you know. With the previous two examples, I wholeheartedly agree with where they're coming from and what they're doing and how it's absolutely wrong. When you look at least from my opinion, when you look at the tactics that are being portrayed in this particular example, and as you said, even in terms of, you know, with cities, if the design was about Paris and you're introducing San Francisco and London, I think you're really going way off. But if your design portrayed about cities, then yeah, you could actually interject San Francisco and London, other cities as well, because maybe it might actually be of interest to people who are looking for sort of like that city type of design, as is the case with cute animals, because understandably most people would think hedgehogs and gerbils are cute animals or whatnot. So there is this really fine gray area with respect to this particular tactic that we're looking at. And again, I think that's one of the reasons why maybe Redbubble takes maybe a little bit of a lighthearted approach with respect to tag spamming. And it's something, unfortunately, I think that we need to live with, not happy about it. But I think I totally concur with the idea that if we see somebody who's doing something really blatant, like, for example, with the first example that you showed us today, that's definitely something grounds for complaining to Redbubble, because understandably, that's, at least in my eyes, that's not right. The second one, I would definitely probably report to as well. This one, I would think it would be more of a report based on the trademark aspect as opposed to the tactic that they're using, because maybe they're trying to branch out and gain other people who probably weren't considering it, and maybe it's something that they would consider. So there is that gray area with respect to this. I totally concur with that. Yeah. Never an easy thing, no?
No, it's never easy. Well, one thing I would say about this example, perhaps this was a badly chosen one because it's easy to get distracted by the Beatles and trademark and copyright issues. Let's talk about Paris, London, and San Francisco. So one of the underused products on Redbubble is, of course, clocks. Yeah. And early on, I noticed that you could get a London clock, San Francisco clock, and it was basically just a simple clock design with the word San Francisco or London. Just like you get in some of those international companies where they have an office in Hong Kong and they want to know what the time is in Hong Kong. They have one in San Francisco and they have all the clocks on the wall, side by side, you know, the thing. So if you'd maybe had created those designs for, say, 10 different cities around the world, if you had on your tags here the same principle, which is that you had London, San Francisco, Paris, Hong Kong has tags, the interesting thing to realize is that these tags are links. Yeah. So when you click on San Francisco clock, or you could even say, you could even have a unique sort of name like, I don't know, Chris's San Francisco clock as a tag. When you click on it, it would be taken to a page that would actually show your clocks for San Francisco or for Paris. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. So this, again, is an interesting thing. You know, like, how are we supposed to use tags? Are they only really for exactly describing what our design is? Or can we use them creatively like this? I don't know. Redbubble doesn't really provide these. I was just going to
concur with that. There doesn't seem to be much in terms of clarity or text, even in their blogs or in the back end or of their website, which states what is considered as tag spamming and how you should be using tags. All they say is that tags should be relevant to the particular design, but again, that's really open to interpretation in that respect. No, that's the thing about it.
Exactly. And this is like, if we use tags creatively, if we use tags in odd ways that actually give us a little bit of an advantage, are we tag spamming? Indeed. I don't know.
That's the $1 million question again. I don't know. I was thinking maybe just a thought occurred in my mind too as well. Maybe in terms of trying to correlate and attach one's description to the justification of using those tags. For example, you said Chris's San Francisco clock, Chris's Paris clock. Maybe perhaps in the description you might want to say, or one could say, check out all of the other clocks pertaining to different cities in this collection via the tags attached with this post or whatnot, just to give it some kind of justification to show that, hey, I'm not trying to tag spam you by telling you. I'm just telling you that these are the types of clocks that I have in my shop, and if you would like to see it, you could just click on that link. So there's a creative aspect over there too as well. Again, it is a gray area over here too as well. So it's something which I don't think is going to be solved overnight. I think it's going to be a discussion that we're going to be continuing in and out, weeks ends, months end, years on end. We don't know what the algorithm for Redbubble is like. We don't know what it is that they're going to be looking at or what they're going to be changing in the future. I guess all we can do is we can just speculate and try to figure out what will work, what won't. And obviously, if we do want to have an honest and valuable shop for potential customers, we want to give them the best that we can without trying to make them come across as being tag spammers in the sense of what we've seen here on the screen today. Chris, this has been a really informative and enlightening episode. I'm certain that without a doubt, those people who are viewing this episode, have really gotten something out of it. If somebody wanted to find you or maybe to ask you a direct question or get in touch with you, what would be the best way to do so?
Yeah, I'm an admin for the Facebook group that's called Redbubble and TeePublic Secrets. Okay. And I'm pretty active in there on a daily basis, and that group's very good. It's indexed with tags, so you can actually find a lot of information and in depth, going back, a lot of good advice, I hope. And I welcome people to join that group as long as they don't come in and try to sell their products in the group and are just looking for information. I'm really happy to have them.
That's excellent, excellent. And we'll leave a link to the Facebook group in the description field down below too, as well. So if people want to actually come over and say hello and gain some insights on all of the valuable information that you do share on this particular Facebook group, they'll definitely be able to click on that too as well. So Chris, on behalf of the community here, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to sit down and talk with us and share your insights. And hopefully there might be a possibility that we might be able to sit down and chat again in the near to distant future.
I would love to, Brian. It's been great to meet with you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Have a wonderful day. Take care now. Bye-bye. Hey, I want to say a big thanks to Chris again for taking the time out of his busy day to sit down with me and discuss this topic. If you really enjoyed it, don't forget to give this video a like and hop on over to his Facebook page and show him a little love by obviously asking to join. I'm sure he'll really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this type of interview, check out these other interviews that I have on my channel, all bent on helping you reach more success with your print-on-demand business. So until the next one, take care, be safe, be well, be creative. Bye for now.